Deep in the jungles of Mexico, beneath the crumbling ruins of Palenque, lies a mystery that continues to defy every attempt at explanation. When archaeologists uncovered a hidden chamber, they were confronted not with gold or treasures, but with a vision of red, unlike anything they had seen before. The body of a woman, her tomb, and every object within it were cloaked in a vivid crimson, as though the stone itself had been stained by ritual and time. No inscription named her, no record preserved her story, and yet the scale and placement of her resting place spoke of immense authority. To be laid beside one of the greatest Maya rulers was no accident. Was she a queen whose legacy was deliberately erased, a high priestess whose rituals demanded secrecy, or perhaps a figure whose identity was never meant to be known? For more than 1,000 years, the silence of her tomb has endured, guarding its truth with unbroken shadows. Even today, the Red Queen of Palenque reminds us how easily history can hide its greatest figures, and how much of the ancient world remains shrouded in unanswered questions. Hidden deep within the dense jungles of Chiapas in southern Mexico, Palenque emerges as a vivid testament to the strength and sophistication of the ancient Maya civilization. Built near the banks of the Usumacinta River, the city is surrounded by low mountain ranges, cloaked in lush tropical rainforest, where the humid climate and frequent rains nurture a rich and diverse ecosystem. From afar, Palenque appears as gleaming white stone structures standing out against the deep green sea of the ancient forest, creating a scene both majestic and mysterious. This location not only served as a natural fortress shielding its inhabitants from outside threats, but also positioned Palenque at the heart of a bustling river trade network linking it with other great Maya cities such as Calakmul and Copan, making it a vital crossroads of culture, economy, and power in the region. Palenque began to flourish around the 5th century, but it was not until the reign of Kinich Jana Pakal, when better known as Pakal, that the city entered its most radiant golden age. Under Pakal's rule, Palenque not only expanded its territory, but also reached the pinnacle of cultural, artistic, and scientific achievement. The king commissioned the construction of numerous grand and intricate architectural works, many of which became enduring symbols of the city. On stone walls, Pakal had complex Maya hieroglyphics carved in meticulous detail, recording the history of his dynasty, his lineage, and his accomplishments. The relief sculptures and architecture of this period achieved an extraordinary level of refinement, reflecting a society not only wealthy in material terms, but also possessing a tightly organized political system, high administrative capacity, and a far-sighted vision for the sustainable growth of the kingdom. Standing prominently within the architectural complex of Palenque, the Temple of the Inscriptions is regarded as a masterpiece that carries both profound religious significance and immense political historical value. More than just a sacred place of worship, it is also the royal tomb of King Pakal, designed on a grand scale with highly sophisticated construction. Inside, stone panels meticulously carved with Maya hieroglyphics recount the entire history of the dynasty, military achievements, creation myths, and most notably, Pakal's journey into the afterlife. These motifs and inscriptions are not only works of art, but also a priceless archive offering a gateway into the mindset and spiritual beliefs of the Maya people. The discovery of the Temple of the Inscriptions in the 1950s marked a turning point in archaeology, overturning the previous belief that the Maya did not build royal tombs on a scale comparable to Egypt, and reshaping humanity's understanding of power and funerary rituals in this civilization. Right next to the Temple of the Inscriptions, Temple Athene was initially regarded as an auxiliary structure, modest in scale and noted mainly for its architectural value. For decades, archaeologists considered it merely an extension of the main complex without any special significance. However, in 1994, an excavation led by Arnoldo González Cruz completely changed this perception. As layers of stone and earth were removed, they uncovered an almost perfectly preserved tomb containing the remains of a powerful woman. The tomb's exceptional state of preservation and the abundance of grave goods immediately stunned the archaeological community. The title Red Queen was born from the vivid layer of red cinnabar dust that covered the body and every object inside the tomb, a detail both beautiful and haunting, opening major questions about her identity and role in the history of Palenque. The location of Temple the Threne, right next to the Temple of the Inscriptions, the burial place of King Pakal, makes this discovery particularly noteworthy. Placing a woman's tomb in such an honored position is unlikely to have been a coincidence. This suggests a special relationship between the woman in the tomb and the king, or at the very least, that she held a status equal to that of royalty. Researchers quickly put forward several hypotheses. Could she have been Pakal's queen, his companion in both political and religious life, or perhaps a figure of the highest prestige within the Maya priesthood, wielding enough spiritual authority to be buried in one of the most prestigious locations in the city? In 1994, as each stone step leading down to the tomb of Temple 13 was cleared, the air inside grew increasingly thick and heavy. Before the archaeologists appeared, a scene both mysterious and haunting. A vivid layer of red cinnabar dust covered the coffin stone walls and every burial object, glowing deep crimson under the sweep of flashlight beams, creating an indescribably eerie light. The pungent metallic scent of mercury filled the air, forcing the excavation team to wear protective masks to continue their work. That moment was not merely an important archaeological discovery, but felt like a doorway opening into another world, one where time had stood still for over 300 years, preserving every trace of a royal funeral shrouded in mystery. Since the 1994 discovery, Palenque's fame has no longer been confined to Pakal's tomb or its legendary inscriptions, but has become inseparably linked to the story of a powerful, mysterious woman known as the Red Queen. Her presence, along with her silence, lasting more than a millennium, remains an enigma that continues to drive researchers in their quest for answers. Today, the Temple of the Inscriptions and Temple the Third are regarded as twin monuments in archaeological value. One stands as a symbol of the power of a legendary king, the other as a sealed gateway guarding the secret of an unnamed queen. This duality makes Palenque a uniquely compelling site, where clearly recorded history intertwines with the most captivating gaps of the Maya civilization. In the spring of 1994, under the first pale shafts of sunlight filtering through the dense Chiapas jungle, archaeologist Arnoldo González Cruz and his team made their way toward Temple Thene, a modest structure long overshadowed by the grandeur of the nearby Temple of the Inscriptions. For decades, it had been dismissed as a mere auxiliary building, an architectural footnote in the sprawling Palenque complex. Yet as they cleared vegetation and debris, the researchers' careful inspection revealed something curious, a section of masonry with a subtle but unnatural seam. This anomaly stirred cautious excitement. For in archaeology, such irregularities often hint at hidden spaces. Working stone by stone, they gradually uncovered a narrow descending passageway, its dark mouth opening into the earth. The air grew cooler, and the sense of anticipation deepened as if each step downward was a journey into a secret that had been locked away untouched for well over 1,000 years. The passageway was cramped and shrouded in darkness, its uneven stone steps worn smooth by centuries and carpeted in a thin, slippery layer of moss. Each breath carried the stale scent of damp earth, mingled with the cold, mineral-laden air seeping up from below, wrapping the space in a stillness that felt as if time had been frozen since the 7th century. Step by cautious step, the excavation team descended their flashlight beams, slicing through the gloom until they fell upon a stone door, perfectly intact. Its surface was encrusted with a faint, chalky layer of mineral salts, an unmistakable signature of a seal undisturbed for more than 1,300 years. As the heavy stone door creaked open, a sudden wave of air sharp with a metallic tang rushed out from the darkness within, stinging their senses. In the muted glow of flashlight beams, the chamber slowly revealed itself, a surreal vision, awash in a blazing red hue. Every surface, from the cold limestone floor to the towering walls and the contours of the sarcophagus, was thickly blanketed in cinnabar powder, so pervasive it filled even the smallest cracks, as though the entire space had been submerged in liquid fire or blood. At the heart of the room rested a massive limestone sarcophagus, perfectly aligned, holding the skeletal remains of a woman whose bones had been stained a deep, somber crimson over centuries by the very mineral that covered her tomb. With each cautious step, the fine powder swirled upward, releasing a cloud of scarlet motes that drifted through the air, catching the light and forming an otherworldly halo around the scene, a haunting spectacle that seared itself into memory. The initial sensation that struck the archaeologists was an overwhelming mix of awe and disbelief, not solely from the intense, almost supernatural red that enveloped the chamber, but from the extraordinary state of preservation it concealed. The massive limestone sarcophagus remained firmly in its original place, untouched by time or human interference. Scattered around it, the grave goods lay exactly as they had been arranged over 13 centuries earlier: intricately carved stone masks, strings of beads, delicate shell ornaments, and vibrant turquoise jewelry, each piece radiating silent testimony to the wealth and status of the woman within. Not a single object had been disturbed. There were no traces of looting, no signs of vandalism, an almost unheard-of phenomenon in Mesoamerican archaeology, where most royal tombs had long been ransacked. Here, it felt as though the burial had been sealed yesterday, waiting patiently for the day it would be seen again. Another striking difference lay in the burial rite itself. In Palenque, cinnabar had been found in tombs before, but never in such overwhelming quantities. Using such a large amount of this precious and toxic mineral not only required significant resources, but also carried powerful symbolic meaning tied to rebirth, immortality, and authority in Maya culture. The Temple Thethene tomb was not merely a place of rest. It was a carefully crafted ritual space designed to protect and honor the one interred within. When the team compared the burial in Temple Thethene with the grand tomb of King Pakal in the Temple of the Inscriptions, they were struck by a set of intriguing parallels. Both were located within prominent central architectural monuments, spaces of high symbolic and ceremonial value. Each displayed a meticulous approach to spatial planning, where the placement of the sarcophagus offerings and surrounding structures seemed to follow a deliberate, meaningful order. Pakal's resting place is renowned for the intricately carved lid of his sarcophagus, a masterpiece of Maya art depicting mythological scenes that form a symbolic bridge between the mortal world and the realm of the gods. Although the tomb in Temple Thethene bears no inscriptions or monumental carvings, it mirrors Pakal's burial in the careful arrangement of its grave goods. The lavish and deliberate use of cinnabar and its immediate proximity to the king's own resting place, details that strongly imply the woman entombed here held a status far beyond that of an ordinary member of Maya society. In contrast to the grandeur of Pakal's burial, with its monumental stairways and ceremonial corridors proclaiming the king's power, the tomb in Temple Thene was deliberately concealed, accessible only through a narrow, hidden passage. This secrecy suggested an intentional effort to keep it out of sight, perhaps to protect it or to veil its occupant in mystery. While Pakal's identity is firmly established through abundant hieroglyphic inscriptions, the woman interred beside him left no name, no title, and no record of her life. Such absence is perplexing. If her rank was high enough to rest in such proximity to the king, what purpose lay behind erasing every trace of who she was? For archaeologists, stepping into Temple Thene's burial chamber was not simply a matter of discovering human remains, it was a direct encounter with a story that had lain dormant for over 13 centuries. That brilliant red seemed like a reminder that although time can erase many things, some secrets find ways to endure, defying every attempt at interpretation. And the Red Queen, as they came to call her from that moment, stepped out of history's shadows to become one of the most enigmatic figures of Palenque and the entire Maya world. In the history of Maya archaeology, few discoveries have provoked as much heated and prolonged debate as the case of the Red Queen, the mysterious woman found in Temple Thene at Palenque. When archaeologists opened the stone door in 1994, they were confronted with a striking scene. The entire chamber and the body within were covered in the vivid red of cinnabar. This immediately transformed her into a great enigma, for there was no inscription, no glyph, no clue to her name title or relation to the royal dynasty. All that remained were bones stained deep crimson, a jade mask, exquisite jewelry, and the dazzling cinnabar that coated the coffin, the walls, and the floor. That red hue was at once majestic and haunting, turning the Red Queen into a symbol of the intersection between death ritual and eternal power in Maya culture. From that moment, her true identity became a question without an answer, compelling scholars to search for clues in layers of cultural symbolism and modern scientific analysis. The name Red Queen did not originate from any ancient record, but from the dazzling crimson hue that enveloped the entire tomb inside Temple Thene. That color came from cinnabar, a mineral composed of mercury sulfide, rare and extremely toxic, often displaying a bright or deep red shade. For the Maya, cinnabar was not only a scarce material that was difficult to obtain, but also held sacred ritual value. They ground it into powder to coat funerary masks made of jade or greenstone, to decorate statues of deities, or to scatter over the dead. What made the Red Queen extraordinary was the sheer amount of cinnabar used, far exceeding any other known case. It was not only applied to the body, but also spread across the wall's floor coffin, and even seeped into the bones themselves. Archaeologists estimate that dozens of kilograms of cinnabar were employed, a staggering quantity within the economic and resource constraints of the 7th century. The extraction and use of such a rare and highly toxic substance showed that the community willingly sacrificed much to carry out this ritual. This reflects the exceptional status of the woman in the tomb. She was certainly not an ordinary member of the royal household, but a figure of supreme power, deemed worthy of being sanctified by an eternal red, a symbol of immortality and authority in the Maya worldview. In the symbolic system of the Maya, red was not merely the color of blood, it represented vital energy, the power of the sun, and the possibility of rebirth after death. For this reason, covering the remains of the Red Queen with cinnabar can be seen as a ritual intended to grant her immortality or to ensure that her soul would be reborn in the divine realm. Archaeological records and studies of Maya symbolism further suggest that cinnabar was believed to seal the soul, preserving the presence of the deceased so it would not dissipate into nothingness, but instead remain anchored within the cosmic order. Many modern scholars also argue that the thick layer of cinnabar served as a kind of ritual shield, a protective barrier to prevent the Red Queen's soul from being disturbed by supernatural forces or unseen enemies. In the Maya worldview, death was not the end, but rather a transition into another state of existence. Powerful individuals, particularly royalty and the priestly elite, were believed to continue playing active roles in the cosmic cycle after leaving the earthly world. Enveloping the entire tomb in brilliant red may therefore have been the community's way of emphasizing this transformation. The Red Queen was no longer a mere human being, but had been elevated into the embodiment of eternal power, an immortal symbol intertwined with the religious faith and political authority of Palenque. When archaeologists entered the narrow chamber of Temple Thene and examined the remains, they realized that every single bone had absorbed a strange, deep crimson hue after centuries of contact with cinnabar. The entire skeleton seemed cloaked in a color both brilliant and haunting, transforming it from mere decayed bones into a vivid symbol of blood and the sun. The Red Queen's face was covered with a greenstone mask, giving her an appearance at once mysterious and majestic. Across her chest lay carefully arranged strings of precious beads, gleaming through the red dust, while around her rested finely crafted artifacts, jewelry, and ritual objects. What stood out most was the complete absence of weapons or emblems of war. All the grave goods reflected beauty, sacredness, and spiritual authority. The scene left a lasting impression, a woman lying motionless within a stone coffin, yet the entire space around her glowed with a fiery red, evoking reverence, while also stirring an eerie sense of immortality. The Red Queen was no longer simply a body interred in ritual. She had been transformed into a symbol, a transcendent presence beyond ordinary life, serving both as a testament to the grandeur of Palenque and as an enigma that continues to defy the efforts of posterity to unravel her mystery. The true identity of the Red Queen remains one of the greatest mysteries, largely because her tomb contained no inscriptions, glyphs, or symbols that could reveal who she was. This absence is particularly unusual compared to many Maya royal burials, which often recorded names, emblems, or at least some marker to affirm status. Such silence has given rise to a range of theories. Some scholars argue that the omission of her name may have been a deliberate religious practice. Once crossing into the divine realm, an individual no longer needed a worldly name, instead becoming a transcendent being beyond human boundaries. In many ancient cultures, erasing or concealing a name was also considered a way to protect the soul from enemies or to elevate the deceased into a sacred figure. Others, however, believe the disappearance of the Red Queen's name had political motivations. Perhaps she once wielded immense power, destabilizing Palenque's balance, and later generations deliberately erased her memory to control her legacy. A more practical explanation is that records of her did exist, inscriptions or documents, but have since been lost or destroyed over time. The harsh tropical climate with its high humidity and invasive vegetation has erased countless Maya monuments without a trace. This lack of evidence leaves the Red Queen suspended between presence and absence, tangible through archaeological remains, yet immersed in a void of history that cannot be filled. To gradually unravel the mystery of the Red Queen, scientists have employed a wide range of modern research methods, from anthropological analysis and bone morphology studies to advanced DNA decoding technology. These investigations have yielded important clues, insufficient for a final conclusion, yet enough to sketch a clearer portrait of this enigmatic figure. First, the skeletal analysis revealed that the Red Queen was over 60 years old at the time of her death, an unusually advanced age in ancient Maya society where average lifespans were much shorter due to disease warfare and harsh living conditions. Her longevity strongly suggests a privileged position, likely supported by access to nutrition, medical care, and protection reserved for the elite. She stood about 1.54 meters tall, with a build that was not imposing but robust. Her bones showed no signs of major illnesses apart from natural age-related changes, indicating that she had enjoyed relatively good health throughout most of her life. Cranial morphology studies offered further insight. The features of her skull matched those of the local population in Chiapas, where Palenque was located. This ruled out the possibility that she was a foreigner captive or political figure brought from afar. She was truly of Palenque, strengthening the theory that she played an essential role within the local power structure. The most crucial and striking evidence came from DNA analysis. Independent studies confirmed that the Red Queen was not directly related by blood to King Pakal. She was neither his mother nor his sister. This was surprising at first, as it had been assumed that a burial so close to the Temple of the Inscriptions must have belonged to a close blood relative of the king. Yet once that hypothesis was ruled out, another possibility gained strength: that the Red Queen was Pakal's wife, the queen consort who shared the highest social and political authority in Maya society. Many researchers favor this theory, supported by additional archaeological evidence. First, the location of her tomb, immediately adjacent to Pakal's, was no coincidence, but likely reflected a close and intimate relationship. Second, her funerary rites bore strong similarities to those of Pakal, from the use of cinnabar to the symbolic artifacts buried with her, indicating that she was honored on a level equal to that of a ruler. If this theory is correct, the Red Queen may in fact have been Zakbu Ajau Pakal's wife, who is mentioned in several inscriptions. Zakbu Ajau was a renowned queen, influential in both the political and religious life of Palenque. However, existing evidence is still not sufficient for a definitive conclusion. Ongoing DNA research continues to seek more distant genetic links within the royal lineage in hopes of verifying whether the Red Queen was indeed a direct member of the royal family. For now, the results remain inconclusive. Yet it is precisely this ambiguity that makes the Red Queen's identity even more mysterious and captivating. She is simultaneously present in her bones, her green stone mask, her exquisite ornaments, and absent, erased from written history. Between the certainty of scientific evidence and the void of historical records, the Red Queen exists as a paradox, both near and distant. Recognized as a figure of supreme power, yet without a confirmed name. This is one of the greatest challenges of modern archaeology, where advanced science can reach astonishing heights, but some secrets of the past still stubbornly refuse to be revealed. Another approach to interpreting the identity of the Red Queen suggests that she may not have been merely Pakal's consort, but rather a high priestess who held exceptional religious authority within Palenque society. This theory is supported by archaeological evidence indicating that the grave goods in her tomb were overwhelmingly ritualistic and spiritual in nature, rather than associated with warfare or military symbols typically found in the burials of the elite. The use of an enormous quantity of cinnabar to cover her remains may also signify more than a funerary custom, it transformed her into a sacred symbol, a gateway linking the human world with the divine. In Maya religious thought, such figures who served as intermediaries were often sanctified and believed to possess the power to uphold cosmic balance. If this interpretation is correct, the Red Queen cannot simply be remembered as Pakal's wife, but must be regarded as an independent figure whose spiritual authority could influence both the religious and political life of Palenque. Her burial beside Pakal's tomb may reflect the parallel and complementary relationship between royal power and sacred authority, demonstrating that Maya society constructed a complex structure of power in which rulers and priesthood together sustained both the sacred and political order. The Red Queen is clear evidence that archaeology is not merely about unearthing artifacts, but also about piecing together fragments to reconstruct the human story of the past. Each layer of vivid cinnabar, each bone stained by the passage of time, and each finely crafted burial object acts as a link in the larger picture of Maya power, faith, and society. Yet the most crucial pieces, her true name, her role, her life story, remain absent. More than 1,300 years have passed, leaving behind only a crimson tomb and a silence that defies explanation. And it is precisely this silence that gives the Red Queen her allure, a figure made tangible through material evidence, yet one that remains elusive and difficult to grasp in her true identity. The name Red Queen, given to the woman covered in cinnabar within Temple Thene, is not merely a temporary label, but a reflection of the entire archaeological experience. It evokes the awe inspired by the deadly crimson hue saturating the tomb, the burning desire to unravel the secrets hidden within, and the sense of helplessness when crucial clues have been erased by time. She may have been Pakal's queen, a high priestess, or even a powerful figure whose name history deliberately erased. Yet regardless of her true identity, the Red Queen endures as a symbol of an unresolved past, a reminder that no matter how advanced science becomes, it must remain humble before the mysteries left behind by time. When the sealed chamber of Temple Thene was finally opened in 1994, archaeologists felt as though they had stepped into a world suspended between life and death. The air was heavy with the brilliance of cinnabar, its crimson dust clinging to every surface like a veil of blood. Yet beyond this shocking sight lay something even more astonishing, an array of exquisitely crafted offerings so refined that they instantly proclaimed the buried woman's extraordinary rank. But their presence was also puzzling. Why were these treasures arranged in such unusual ways? Among the treasures discovered in the tomb of Temple Thene, the greenstone funerary mask placed over the face of the Red Queen stands out as the most striking and enigmatic artifact. For the Maya, a mask was not merely decoration or a covering for death. It carried profound spiritual meaning tied to the concept of immortality and the continuity of the soul. Greenstone, often jade or other rare minerals with a greenish hue, was regarded as the symbol of life breath and the heart, the very source of existence. When a powerful figure passed away, placing such a mask upon their face was not just a way to preserve the body, but also a sacred ritual, granting them an immortal visage so they could cross into the divine realm with a new eternal form. The Red Queen's mask was exquisitely crafted with every delicate detail, reflecting the masterful skill of Palenque's artisans. Unlike many funerary masks that radiated ferocity or bore the traits of warriors, this one conveyed serenity, dignity, and a quiet authority without evoking fear. It did not aim to proclaim violent strength, but rather represented a different kind of power, one rooted in spirituality, ritual, and sacred symbolism. This calm and majestic presence has led many scholars to believe that the Red Queen was likely tied to sacred rites, perhaps even serving as an intermediary between the human and divine worlds. Thus, the stone mask was far more than a funerary object. It was a symbol affirming the Red Queen's status. It allowed her to step into the realm of immortality, not only in the memory of the Maya people, but also within the sacred world she was believed to belong to. Alongside the greenstone funerary mask covering her face, the remains of the Red Queen were discovered in a space overflowing with necklaces, shell ornaments, turquoise jade, and countless other finely crafted objects. These were not merely displays of material wealth, but treasures steeped in symbolic meaning, reflecting the Maya's profound beliefs about death and rebirth. Turquoise, with its clear blue hue, was linked to the sky, to water, and to the cycle of renewal, the three essential elements that sustain life. Jade and other green stones symbolize the heart, the breath, eternal life, and the aspiration for immortality. Meanwhile, seashells brought from distant oceans carried the image of the sea and evoked the underworld, the realm every soul must cross on its journey after death. The presence of such rare and sacred ornaments around the Red Queen cannot be seen merely as an earthly tribute to her status. Instead, they appear as carefully prepared provisions for an endless spiritual journey meant to help her traverse the realms and be guarded by the forces of nature and the divine. Necklaces coiled around her body, glimmering green stones, and shells placed beside her bones all serve as prayers given physical form, affirming that this woman was not buried only as a noble queen, but as a soul equipped to continue existing within the mythological world of the Maya. One of the most striking differences in the Red Queen's tomb is the complete absence of weapons or symbols connected to warfare. This is particularly remarkable since in many other Maya royal tombs, archaeologists often uncover spears, stone blades, obsidian points, or artifacts that emphasize the military authority of the deceased. The total lack of martial objects in the Red Queen's burial suggests that she did not belong to the warrior elite, nor was she associated with violent politics. Instead, the focus on the funerary mask necklaces, precious stones, and intricate ritual objects paints a very different picture. The Red Queen may have been a figure of profound spiritual importance, perhaps a high priestess or a patroness of sacred ceremonies. In Maya society, where politics and religion were deeply intertwined, such a role could wield power equal to that of royalty, even serving as a bridge between the divine realm and the human world. This distinction makes the Red Queen's tomb especially unique. It does not portray the authority of a queen who brandished weapons to impose her will, but rather depicts a figure whose power was expressed in subtler ways through sanctity, ritual, and spiritual belief. It also highlights a rare aspect of Maya archaeology, the existence of women whose influence extended far and wide, not through war, but through their ability to connect humanity with the sacred. No discussion of the Red Queen can ignore cinnabar, the brilliant crimson mineral that covered her entire tomb from the skeleton and grave goods to the very stone walls. The immense quantity of cinnabar found in Temple Thun astonished archaeologists, for never before in Maya culture had such an overdose been discovered. That shimmering red dust created not only a haunting, mysterious atmosphere, but also raised the question, why was so much cinnabar necessary? Scholars have proposed multiple theories. Some argue that cinnabar symbolized blood, the eternal source of life. Covering the Red Queen's body in this vivid pigment was akin to a ritual bloodbath, granting her everlasting vitality. Others suggest that the vast amount of cinnabar acted as a seal for the soul, imprisoning her spiritual essence within the tomb, preventing her return to the world of the living, and ensuring her spirit would not dissolve into nothingness. Another interpretation sees cinnabar as a sacred catalyst, enabling the Red Queen to cross the threshold between life and death into the divine realm. The act of saturating the entire space guaranteed the completion of this passage. On a practical level, cinnabar's antiseptic qualities and ability to slow decomposition may have helped preserve the remains and artifacts. Yet its high toxicity also made the tomb a hazardous place for intruders, unintentionally forming a natural barrier that protected the Red Queen's resting place. This dual role, both spiritual and practical, turned cinnabar into the defining feature of Temple Thene, making the tomb utterly unique and ensuring the Red Queen remains one of the greatest mysteries in Maya archaeology. Taken as a whole, the tomb of Temple Thene appears to be a carefully orchestrated ritual, sending a clear message. This woman was not only significant in earthly life, but also held an essential role in the spiritual realm of the kingdom. Surrounded by sacred objects rather than weapons, she embodied a different kind of power, a spiritual authority. Perhaps she was the Red Queen Palenque's queen consort, or perhaps she was the Red One, a living symbol of rebirth and immortality in Maya culture. Either way, one truth remains undeniable: that brilliant cinnabar shroud transformed her into the only figure in Maya history ever interred in such a magnificent and mysterious fashion. Among the ruins of Palenque, the Red Queen remains a haunting enigma, one of the few women in the entire Maya world whose burial rivals that of kings. Her tomb gleams with cinnabar's crimson dust, her body placed in a temple beside Pakal the Great, as if death itself could not strip her of status and power. Such honors were almost never granted to women, which raises a profound question: who was she, and why was she chosen for such a fate? To unravel this mystery, we must look beyond Palenque, placing her burial in the rare company of other Maya noblewomen, measuring her against queens and priestesses from Egypt and Peru, and decoding the universal language of red, a color of blood life and immortality that links civilizations across the ancient world. In Maya archaeology, one of the most striking observations for researchers is the rarity of female burials conducted with royal rites. The vast majority of excavated tombs belong to men, reigning kings, powerful warriors, or nobles holding political authority. Women, though present in court life as queens, princesses, or noble ladies, were seldom honored in death with splendor equal to their male counterparts. Archaeological evidence reveals a few cases of noble women interred with valuable grave goods, but none were ever completely covered in the bright red layer of cinnabar, a ritual both costly and spiritually charged, except for the Red Queen. Anthropological and archaeological studies further indicate that only a very small proportion of elite women were buried within the urban core. Most Maya female graves discovered are modest, with few objects, often located on the periphery or in structures of lesser religious significance. This modesty makes the case of the Red Queen all the more extraordinary. Not only did she receive a separate tomb, Temple Thene, but her resting place was situated immediately beside Palenque's grandest monument, the Temple of the Inscriptions, where King Pakal was buried. Such placement was more than an unusual honor. It implied that she was regarded as a figure parallel to the king in eternity. Thus, the central question is not merely why she was buried this way, but what made her such a rare exception in Maya history. She may have been a queen whose political and ritual status matched that of her husband, or perhaps a supreme priestess with a unique role in linking kingship to the divine. Whatever the case, the Red Queen's existence exposes gaps in our current understanding of women's roles in Maya society. In exceptional circumstances, they could transcend the shadows of the royal court to become pivotal figures at the heart of both religious and political systems. The Red Queen is regarded as an exception in the Maya world, and this exception does not merely reflect her personal power, but may also mark a turning point in how Maya society perceived the role of women in royalty and religion. Although her true name has been lost, the lavish funeral rites and her prestigious burial beside King Pakal demonstrate that she once bore an immense responsibility. Several hypotheses have been proposed to explain this uniqueness. First, if the Red Queen was in fact Zakbu Ajal, the consort of Pakal, this suggests that the position of queen in Maya society might not have been confined to the role of a mere shadow behind the king. Her death was commemorated with a ritual equal in grandeur to that of a ruler, revealing that women could be acknowledged in a nearly equivalent position, at least in spiritual and symbolic terms. Another line of interpretation argues that if she was not Pakal's wife, then features such as the funerary mask, the complete covering of cinnabar, and the emphasis on ritual rather than military objects point instead to the image of a supreme priestess. In that case, the Red Queen may have been the gatekeeper between the living and the divine, a figure not only tied to royalty, but also a pillar of Palenque's religious life. Finally, some scholars view her as a deliberate political religious symbol constructed to reinforce the authority of the dynasty, turning her into an ideal archetype that bound kingship with faith and was deified after death. Whichever hypothesis proves correct, the presence of the Red Queen confirms a striking reality: Maya society could assign women a status far greater than what traditional records suggest, allowing them to become central figures at the core of both royal and religious power. While many researchers lean toward identifying her as King Pakal's wife, the unusual burial goods suggest a broader role. She had no weapons, no signs of military political power. Instead, everything centered on ritual and symbolism. This has led many scholars to believe that the Red Queen transcended the image of a traditional queen to become a religious figure responsible for safeguarding the cosmic balance of Palenque. This is comparable to cases in other civilizations where women sometimes served as spiritual pivots. In Maya society, where ritual was deeply tied to political authority, a supreme priestess could be as important as a king. In the effort to understand the true significance of the Red Queen, comparing her to other queens and powerful women in ancient history provides a richer and deeper perspective. In Egypt, a prime example is Queen Nefertari, the wife of Pharaoh Ramses II. Her tomb in the Valley of the Queens was not only a lavish structure decorated with exquisite reliefs and wall paintings, but also a clear reflection of how the Egyptian court honored the role of the queen. Nefertari was not merely portrayed as the pharaoh's consort, but also as the embodiment of the goddess Hathor, the symbol of love, fertility, and divine protection. In her funeral rites, she was divinized, entering the afterlife as a goddess. When compared to the Red Queen, we see a similarity in how both were interred, with rituals emphasizing a superhuman transcendent quality beyond the realm of ordinary women. However, the crucial difference lies in the fact that Nefertari's identity was carefully recorded, affirming her place in history, whereas the Red Queen remains completely anonymous, a mysterious shadow known only through the crimson layers of cinnabar left upon her remains. Another equally meaningful comparison comes from South America, with the discovery of the Lady of Chao from the Moche culture in Peru. Unearthed in 2005, The Lady of Chao was buried with a lavish array of grave goods, including weapons and symbols of authority usually reserved for male rulers. The presence of these items challenged the long-standing belief that political and military power belonged solely to men, proving instead that women in Mochi society could also rise as leaders, even in the realm of warfare. Placed beside the Lady of Chao, the Red Queen represents a different kind of authority. She was not associated with the image of a warrior or military might, but rather with ritual spirituality and the symbolic power of the color red. Yet both figures share a vital commonality. They broke through the constraints of traditional roles, serving as evidence that ancient women under exceptional circumstances could hold power that extended far beyond the domestic sphere and become central figures in the political and religious life of their societies. One of the elements that makes the Red Queen such a distinctive figure in Maya archaeology is the red pigment that covered her entire remains and burial chamber. Unlike other noble tombs, where cinnabar was sprinkled in symbolic spots, the Red Queen's tomb was saturated in crimson, turning it into a striking declaration of life, death, and rebirth. Yet the meaning of red was not limited to Maya culture alone. Across many ancient civilizations, red was consistently seen as the color of cosmic power, blood, and the sun. In Egypt, red carried a dual nature. It was a force of destruction linked to the blazing desert and the god Seth, but it was also a color of renewal when used in rites of rebirth and soul protection. Ancient Egyptians often used red earth in sacred rituals to evoke the flow of life. Meanwhile, the Romans regarded red as the color of the army of Mars, the god of war, and as a sign of collective strength. Armor banners and even triumphal ceremonies were saturated with red, a declaration of intimidation and dominance before enemies. In the East, particularly in ancient Chinese culture, red symbolized blessings, joy, and fertility. It appeared in marriage rituals, agricultural festivals, and in beliefs tied to prosperity. In the Andes of South America, cultures such as the Moche and the Inca also employed red in funerary rites, associating it with blood, the sun, and the eternal cycle of rebirth. The common thread across all these traditions was the conviction that red not only stood for life, but also acted as a bridge between the visible world and unseen divine power. For the Red Queen, red became the very language of immortality. It cloaked her body, soaked into every corner of her sarcophagus, and projected the image of a figure who existed not merely as a human being, but as a symbol with cosmic resonance. This suggests her death was not simply commemorated as a funeral ritual, but also as a political and religious message affirming the enduring power of Palenque's dynasty and the belief that from blood and death springs eternal rebirth. That crimson hue allowed the Red Queen to transcend the boundaries of an individual identity and become a universal archetype, at once uniquely Maya and yet part of humanity's shared tradition of using red to proclaim that life never truly ends. The Red Queen emerges as a rare exception. In the Maya world, a woman buried with a grandeur typically reserved for kings, yet whose identity has been erased from history. This mystery has made her the center of numerous theories. She may have been Pakal's queen, a supreme priestess, or even a political religious figure deified to unite royal power with faith. When placed alongside figures such as Egypt's Nefertari or Peru's Lady of Chao, one sees an important common thread. In many ancient civilizations, women could hold central roles and be commemorated with rituals far beyond conventional norms. And the color red, the hue of blood, the sun, and immortal life served as a universal thread running through cultures used to proclaim that death was not the end. For the Red Queen, that crimson did not merely cover her remains, but enveloped the entire enigma surrounding her, transforming her into a symbol both present and distant, living on forever in humanity's imagination. Among the countless discoveries in Maya archaeology, few stir as much fascination and frustration as the mysterious Red Queen. Found resting in a chamber, drenched in cinnabar's crimson glow, entombed beside the mighty King Pakal himself, she emerges from the shadows of history without a voice, without a name, yet wrapped in rituals that no one else ever received. Her burial is unlike any other, her silence deafening, and her identity concealed behind layers of red dust. Three haunting questions still echo through the ruins of Palenque. Why was she the only one buried in such a way? Why does no inscription breathe her name? And most disturbingly, was her memory deliberately erased? Throughout the history of Maya archaeology, countless royal and noble tombs have been unearthed, yet none has ever reproduced a funerary ritual quite like that of the Red Queen. The most striking difference lies in the use of an enormous quantity of cinnabar, to the point that both the body and the burial chamber were completely engulfed in a vivid crimson glow. This was not merely decorative or a common ceremonial practice, but a deliberate act seemingly imbued with meaning far beyond any Maya funerary custom known to us. This raises a pressing question. What made the Red Queen so exceptional that she was granted such a rare honor? If she was truly King Pakal's consort, why were other queens not buried in the same manner? If she was a priestess, then her authority must have extended far beyond ordinary religious duties, elevating her into a unique symbol in the history of Palenque. Some scholars suggest that Palenque may have devised a once-in-history ritual solely for her as a way of commemorating an extraordinary event. Perhaps her death coincided with a turning point in the dynasty. Yet without concrete evidence, all such theories remain in the realm of speculation, leaving the mystery of the Red Queen even harder to unravel. In Maya cultural tradition, hieroglyphic writing held an immensely important role. It was carved on stele temple walls, and especially within royal tombs, to record military achievements, genealogies, and the myths tied to the deceased. Right beside Temple Throne, the tomb of King Pakal stands as a clear example, stelae densely covered in hieroglyphs. Not only praise his power, but also recount the entire political and religious trajectory of Palenque. For this reason, the complete silence within the Red Queen's tomb becomes all the more perplexing. Not a single line, not a single symbol, not even the faintest trace suggests that any inscription ever existed. Archaeologists have proposed two main hypotheses. The first suggests that inscriptions may once have been present, but over time, erosion or destruction erased them completely. Yet careful examination of the site revealed no obvious signs of defacement or fading, making this explanation less convincing. The second and far more controversial hypothesis is that the tomb never had inscriptions from the very beginning. This raises a troubling paradox. If the Red Queen was such an important figure, why was she not mentioned at all? Some scholars argue that this omission could reflect a religious belief that when a person is elevated to the divine realm, their earthly name is no longer necessary. Others, however, contend that this was a deliberate political silence. By excluding her name from the written record, the ruling elite could both maintain the grandeur of ritual veneration while simultaneously controlling collective memory, ensuring that the Red Queen's true role would remain forever obscured. One of the most hotly debated aspects surrounding the Red Queen is the possibility of a deliberate concealment of her true identity and role. World history has recorded many similar cases in which powerful figures were intentionally erased from collective memory. In Egypt, Pharaoh Akhenaten, after carrying out his controversial religious reforms, had his name chiseled off monuments by later generations to obscure his legacy. In Rome, the practice of damnatio memoriae, the condemnation of memory, was applied to emperors deemed traitors or dangerous to the order of the state. Placing the Red Queen in this context, scholars cannot help but wonder, was she also a figure whose power exceeded the boundaries of what was permissible for a queen or a priestess, perhaps even a political religious figure who overshadowed the royal court itself? If so, then after her death, later generations might have chosen to honor her with an unprecedentedly grand funeral ritual, while at the same time erasing her name from the written record to control collective memory. Another hypothesis suggests that the Red Queen may have been tied to a dramatic upheaval, perhaps a political crisis, a struggle for power, or a divisive religious event, making the concealment of her identity a way of sealing off history. Remarkably, while Palenque's inscriptions describe countless events in great detail, the Red Queen is entirely absent, as if her silence itself were part of a carefully orchestrated plan. The greatest paradox in the story of the Red Queen is this: the less we know, the more mysterious and captivating she becomes. No one knows her true name, yet she was granted a rare and lavish burial ritual. Not a single inscription mentions her, yet her tomb lies directly beside the greatest king of Palenque. No oral tradition or written record has survived yet. That very silence has made her the focus of endless theories and scholarly debate. Every detail within Temple theme, from the vivid cinnabar coating that enveloped everything to the greenstone mask placed upon her body to the absolute absence of writing, seems like fragments of a puzzle for which no one holds the solution. Perhaps it is precisely this that keeps the Red Queen alive in our imagination. She embodies a history, deliberately hidden stories the ancients chose not to tell, or perhaps could never tell at all. The Red Queen is not merely an ancient tomb, but also a mirror reflecting the profound voids in Maya history. Her burial compels us to confront haunting questions. Why was she the only one laid to rest in such a strange manner, with her entire chamber drenched in cinnabar red? Why is there not a single inscription mentioning her when the Maya were renowned for their meticulous record-keeping? And most importantly, what exactly was concealed beneath that blood-red layer? Humanity may never find a definitive answer, yet it is precisely these gaps that give the Red Queen her enduring allure. She has become a symbol of silence, of history sealed away, and of mysteries that we continue to struggle to unravel.